My name is Alex Jitianu. I am a member of Oxygen team. I've been working for Oxygen for the past 13 or 14 years. And during this time, a lot of this time, I've been working on design, customization, APIs, and so on. This presentation is about how you can extend Oxygen framework. So Oxygen offers an extended support for a number of XML vocabularies like data or dogbook. So we may talk a lot about these XML vocabularies, but with a bit of work you can get equal levels of support for any XML vocabulary. So this is what we will try to achieve in the next 30 or 40 minutes. As the XML vocabulary, I've chosen P mode because I've heard it being mentioned a lot in the German technical documentation community. It was quite difficult to get my hands on some P mode samples, but I kind of managed through a friend that knew a friend that sort of. So today's agenda, we will create a framework configuration. I will tell you what a framework is. For our P mode documents, we will set up validation and content completion for them. To work in the author mode, it will require some CSS styling. While we're at it, we will also create a couple of actions to help the writer be more proficient while editing the document. And last but not least, we will set up bare publishing. We will try to publish our topic to PDF. Okay, so let's see what the starting point is. For example, if I open a data document inside Oxygen, I get this visual editing mode. If I press enter, I get a list of proposals, the element that can be inserted at this particular location. This works as also in the text mode, although you may not want to see it. What else? I can validate the document as an action here on the toolbar, and I will get errors or warnings. In this case, it's a data specific warning that a key definition cannot be found. To publish is just a matter of choosing one of the existing outputs and applying it. The transformation runs here in the background, and when it's finished we should be able to see a PDF. Unless something goes horribly wrong. And here it is. So this is what you get out of the box. Oopsie. For data. Now I will open a P mode document. It's a document about how to mount a rotor on a fan. Let's see what we get out of the box. So if we try to validate it, I get an error saying that the DTD cannot be found, so I cannot validate without the schema. If I want to insert new elements, I get none, which is obvious because without a schema you don't know what element you can insert. If you switch to author mode, it's not really helpful. It just presents the text and some tags for the elements. That's pretty much it. If I want to publish and I go to the same place, I'll notice no outputs being available. So doesn't look like much. So this is where we begin. First of all, the framework concept. So a framework in Oxygen represents a configuration like some actions. The actions are actually just a configuration. The publishing, it's also a configuration, together with some resources like CSS files used for visually rendering the documents, or schemas for validating the documents, maybe some custom extensions. I'll get to that a bit later on. But all these consist in what we call a framework or a document type. So to fix validation and content completion, the first step on our list is to create this framework. So I have here in the project view, you can see the pmode folder. This is where I will create my framework. So I'll go to Options, Preferences. On the Document Type Association Locations page, the first thing I will do, so by default Oxygen looks for these frameworks in a predefined location on the file system, but I can add additional such locations. Before doing that, I will switch this options page to project level. This means that this configuration will be stored in my project, and when I share the project with the members of my team, they'll automatically have this configuration as well. So after switching to project mode, I will add a new frameworks directory. I will use an editor variable to make things portable, no absolute paths here. So in the project directory, there is a frameworks directory, and I misspelled that. Frameworks, you see here, and this is where Oxygen should look for additional frameworks. Now I go to the document type association. You'll notice that here we have such a configuration for a number of vocabularies. We have one for data, one for dogbook, and many other XML vocabularies. So just like these ones, I will click new, and I'll create one for pmode. Support for pmode documents. Very important, I will choose to store this configuration externally in the file system, and I will browse for the pmode folder. Don't worry if you're seeing this absolute here, because when it's saved, things will be made relative. So at this point, if we choose OK, and return to Oxygen, you won't see any changes. The validation still throws an error, but as an indicator, if we go to Window, Show View, and select the Properties view, well, I was in a hurry. Before doing that, we need to set some association rules. I will copy this public ID. So each pmode document has an association with the DTD, and it has a public ID. So the association rules is how Oxygen decides that a document belongs to a framework. Such as an association could be made by the root local name of the document or by a namespace. But in the pmode's case, I'll do it through the public ID, like so. So this means that any document that has this public ID should be matched to my pmode framework. And now if I return to the document, just a second. you notice here that it has an entry saying the document type it belongs is the PMode document. So in order to fix the validation, we must instruct Oxygen where to find the DTDs. Now the DTDs are here inside my framework directory, but to make Oxygen know that they are here, I will use a catalog file. The catalog is an Oasis standard, I think, and it's basically a file in which you define mappings. For example, I define the mapping saying that if you're looking for this public ID, which is the PMode public ID, you will find it at this location relative to the catalog. So I will copy this catalog file inside my PMode framework. So it's here, and the DTD is relative to the catalog file. Now I will go back to the framework configuration and edit it, and on the catalogs tab I will add an entry to that catalog. Again, I will not use absolute path. This time I will use the framework editor variable, which is expanded automatically to the folder where this framework is stored. Catalog.xml, like this. And finally, if I now validate, not the catalog, if I validate the PMode, here on the bottom it says validation successful, so it finds the DTD. And if I go in a paragraph and I want to insert something, a new element, it offers me context sensitive proposals. So inside the paragraph I can put an emphasis or an inline data or media object. So we've fixed the validation and the content completion. Next, the visual editing. The author mode in Oxygen is driven by CSS rules. A CSS rule looks something like this. So first you write the selector. This is what matches a particular element. So if I want to style a paragraph, I would put here in the selector the name of that element, paragraph. Next, there are a number of declarations, these yellow rectangles. A declaration is composed in pairs, property name, property values. So I can say that the paragraph should be a block, displayed as a block. It should have a margin and maybe also a foreground color. So this is all that you need to write in order to make Oxygen present the paragraph as a block with some margin and a blue color. Although easy to write, it could prove tedious if you have to micro-style every element from your vocabulary, like let's say how a task should be rendered, how a list, how a step, each one requiring such a rule set with maybe 5 or 10 or 15 properties. So it could take a while. Well, as in many cases, for CSS it proves that less is more. What is less? Less is CSS with just a little more. So it's let's look at it as sort of an extension to CSS. And what it offers are a couple of useful features that you don't normally get in CSS. For example, mixins. A mixin is like a function. You group declaration properties that have a certain meaning inside such a function. So for example, a paragraph is characterized by having a block display, having this particular margin and so on. So I group all these characteristics inside such a mixin, and if I want to say that a paragraph element should be styled like this, I can call this mixin, this function. Later on, if I decide that another element, the step element, needs to be rendered in a similar way, I call the same mixin. So it's kind of reuse for CSS. If you understand the importance of reuse, you can also understand how this helps us for writing CSS. So this brings the idea of having some sort of a library that we can use, and I've created such a library starting from the CSS rules that we already have for data. And the thing is that the vocabulary have somewhat similar concepts. For example, all documents have a title and should be rendered in a similar way, or they have lists or tables. So this is my library. It's a less file, and for example, here I have all that characterizes a title: font size, font family, margins, what characterizes a paragraph, a list. So it might look a bit disconcerting at the first look, but the good thing is that you don't have to work with this. So someone else can create such a library, and using it will be quite easy. So let's see how we would use such a library. So in the CSS folder here in my framework, I will create a new file. Let's call it pmode.less. I will import this library, library.less. Save the file. Options, preferences, we edit the, oops, not this one, the pmode framework. And on the author tab, CSS, we add a new entry. Again, we use the framework variable to point to this newly created less file. And now, if we switch to author mode, it looks much better, right? Well, not really. It's even worse, but we haven't yet written any rules. But let's put them side by side. This CSS of ours and the pmode topic. And let's see. Let's activate the full tags mode so we see what elements are, so we can decide how to style them. So here we have a heading, and the heading, it's somewhat of a title, we decide. So we will write a rule set, we match on the heading element, and we just call this title mixin that characterizes a title. If we switch and refresh, now the heading begins to look like a title. Next, we have some prerequisites. Guess what? Data also has a prerequisites element, so it was quite easy for me to extract some common properties. I just named the mixin similarly because of a lack of imagination. So now the prerequisites has a label before you begin. This is actually what you need. Next, we have a list. A list is something that is again encountered in many, if not all, vocabularies. So I've created a mixin for that as well. I'm just saying that this list, the list element is a list, and now it's a bulleted list. The task body is like I've seen it like a procedure. There are a number of actions. These are the steps that you should do, and afterwards there is a result that you're getting after following these actions. So to style it, we will say that the task body, it's a procedure where the action element, it's what one should do at each step, and the result is what actually you obtain after following those steps. This is how I've created this mixin with these parameters. Return to oxygen, and I think we can hide these tags because it starts looking better and better. So now we have the procedure, the first step, the second step, then you get these results, third step, fourth step, these results. Let's see what else we have here. So we have an image element, but no image is being rendered. If we take a look inside the attributes panel, we should see, that the image is referenced on the object name attribute. So the image element has an object name attribute that points to the image location. Now that we know this, and the image element is in a media object element, I don't know if that's relevant, but we can write the selector like this to be more precise. We can say that an image that is the direct child of the media object is in fact an image, and this mixin has as a parameter the name of the attribute that points to the image. Switch to oxygen, and the images appear. One thing that I've noticed is that still I see the image, but if I want to change the image, I still have to go on the attributes tab and change it from there. How we can make things easier is through form controls. So we can add some form controls into our document. The form control is specialized way of editing an attribute value or an attribute text directly in the context of the document. So you have checkboxes, combo boxes, date pickers. We have quite a few such form controls. But in this case, I want a form controls that can that would let me browse the file system and select a new image, and that's an URL chooser. So we'll say that for the image we want also an URL chooser, and before it should have a label saying this is the image path, and it also needs the name of the attribute that points that it should edit. It's the object name. Now you'll notice this pencil here on the right. I didn't want these form controls to be available all the time because you don't want to change the image all the time, but at certain point. So if you click, so it's sort of a progressive disclosure. If you click this pencil, you get the form control, and you can browse, change the image, and afterwards you can hide it when you don't need it anymore. We leave the fan because the image doesn't have any meaning here. So I think we've pretty much achieved what we wanted from this this topic. I have another one here that has some technical data about my fan in a table. So if we switch to auto mode, it doesn't look like a table, obviously. The good thing is that pmode uses the calls table model, which is a standard, and we have extensive support for it as well. But to render it as a table, we just say that the T group element, let's try it again. The T group element, it's actually a calls table. And now if we switch to author mode again, it will immediately look like a table. And I can even resize columns or copy some cells and paste them on top of other cells. So I can start using the table right away. So like I said, while we're at it, it would also be nice to have some actions to make the author more proficient. For example, some actions to insert list items. So if you are inside this list item, I would like an action to insert a new list item after this one, so I can start building my list. Like I said, these actions are just a configuration, so I'll go to Preferences, edit the pmode framework, this time on the Actions tab, create a new action, and let's give it a name. So this one is inserts a new list item. For the image, I will reuse something from Oxygen. Let's see if I get this right. List item 24.png. Oh, maybe. Yep, apparently it's case sensitive. So I will reuse one of the existing icons. Such an action is composed of a number of operations. An operation has an activation XPath. So this is this controls when this action is enabled. So for example, in this case, this action should be enabled when the ancestor or self is an item, when I'm somewhere inside an item. Now, XPath, it's a standard language for looking inside an XML file. So when this happens, when I'm inside an item, I will invoke an operation. So click Choose. This operation is an insert fragment. So I want to insert a fragment. The operation has a number of parameters, and the fragment that should be inserted, is a new item element with a paragraph in it, because an item should have a paragraph in it. And the insert location is given by the same XPath. So and the position is after. So this fragment should be inserted after the ancestor item element. Let's give it a try. Afterwards, we have to put it in somewhere to be accessible by the user. So let's choose the toolbar. So on the toolbar, we select this action and we copy it here. And now it should appear on the toolbar. So if I am somewhere inside an item and I click it, it will put a new paragraph for me. If I am somewhere else, like in the heading, the action is disabled. What I would like from this action is when I am inside an action element, I want it to be able to click it and insert a new step, a new action after this particular one. So let's do that. We go to the framework again. We edit, that's not what I wanted to do. On the Actions tab, we edit the action again. We will duplicate the current operation, and we will change it, saying that if I am inside an action element, it should still insert a fragment, but this time it should be an action with a step in it, I think. And it should be inserted after the current action element. It's a bit unlucky that the element is named action and we are creating actions. Might be a bit of a confusion. So if we try it now, we see that if we place ourselves inside the action element and we click the action, it puts new actions. But if I place myself in the list context and I use it, it will correctly insert items instead. Two other useful actions that we could create are some actions to work with the table. So for the table, it would be great if I had an action to insert a new row. It would be quite tedious for me to manually insert a new row with all the cells, and even a more important one would be to the one that inserts a new column. Like I said, it helps, the fact that this is a calls table really helps. The calls table model is actually what Dogbook uses as well. So for Dogbook and for calls model, we've created some special operations. And you will find these operations inside the Dogbook jar file from the Oxygen installation directory. So if you go inside Oxygen installation directory, in the frameworks, in the Dogbook framework, you will notice this is Dogbook jar file. So what you need to do is copy this jar inside your P mode or whatever is called a framework. This is the first step. This will give us access to some calls table specific operations. We will edit the framework again. Before creating the action on the call, we'll go on the class path and we will tell Oxygen where to find this jar file, dogbook.jar, like so. And afterwards, on the author tab, we will be able to create some new actions. So this one is to insert a row. The name of the action is not really relevant because we will have icons, but know that you can translate it to a given language if you like. You can internationalize this framework. Again, we will use a predefined action, insert row 24.png. I got it right this time. And the operation should be insert row operation, this one, the one that is designed for the calls table model. What else can we do here? Well, we can give a cell fragment. So each cell should contain a paragraph, because that's the way it has to be in P mode. I don't think we need to do anything else. Okay, so this is the row, and we can create another one for inserting column. Slash images. Okay, and the operation this time is insert column operation, the one for calls. let's also give a cell fragment here. Paragraph. And let's put both of them in the toolbar. After the list item, let's put a separator because they are intended for something else. We put both of them here, and let's see them in action. So they appear on the toolbar. So if I click insert new row, I get a new row of cells. If I click insert new column, I get a new column of cells. So it was quite easy to achieve that. So we've created the actions. Let's see what's next. Publishing. So I said that I wanted to create a PDF from my topic, but unfortunately I couldn't find some XSLTs to create PDF from P-mode. Are any of you an expert in XSLFO? You can create something, make some brainstorming. Unfortunately, I'm not an XSLFO expert either. I tried to create such a transformation for P-mode. It was painful, so I gave that up. But luckily, we have engines that can generate PDF based on CSS. And you know what? We've just created the CSS when we've customized the visual editing mode for Oxygen. And such an engine is called, we have such an engine inside Oxygen. It's called Oxygen PDF Chemistry. Is an engine that generates PDF from XML based on CSS. I think this here is the CSS. You can follow this link to find out more about it. But let's see how we can use it. So first of all, the transformation scenario concept. So in Oxygen, there is this concept of a transformation scenario, which is basically just a configuration for obtaining an output. So if you go here on the toolbar, the configure transformation scenarios, and you click new, you will get some available choices. Like you can apply some XSLTs on the XML that will get you an output, or an AND transformation, or XQuery. But what we want is this XML to PDF transformation with CSS. This is what we need. But we won't create this transformation scenario from here. We will do it from the framework, because we want this transformation scenario to be bundled with the framework and shipped to all of our users. So we'll do it from here, XML to PDF with CSS, and all we have to give it is the path to the CSS. In our case, pmode.less, and that's pretty much all that it needs. We click OK. We can put this checkbox here to indicate, let's say pmode PDF, that this is the default transformation. And now if let's undo these empty steps to make the output look better. If I click this apply transformation scenario here on the toolbar, the transformation runs in the background. There's an indicator here, and the suspense is killing me. And we have a PDF from our topic. You might notice that it's a bit different from what we see here in the author mode. It has this white heading, yellow heading here on top. That is because, bless you, in the library I've hidden here on the bottom some CSS rule specific for the media print. So Oxygen will not use them when rendering this document in the author mode, but when you will print, then these will apply, and in this case they have this yellow background color, and they put the heading string on the top right side of the page. So a short example on how you can customize the PDF through CSS. So I think we have 5 more minutes. Radu, 5 more minutes. Okay. So this new type of transformation scenario, it's something that actually is going to be available in the next version of Oxygen. But if you want to start playing with chemistry right away, you can. I can show you how you can do that as well. All you need is a small build file, like the one that I've created here. It's an AND build file, and basically it just invokes the chemistry engine, and it has a number of parameters that tell chemistry what to process, how to process it, and where to generate it. So if you have such a, actually you can reuse this build file. You can go to Options, Preferences again, and we can create an AND transformation this time. The build file is in the framework directory, publishing, build chemistry.xml. I hope I don't get the working directory should be the Oxygen installation directory, I think. The parameters are the ones that I've shown you. So the chemistry launcher is inside Oxygen. It's this one. To make it portable, we can use this editor variable like we did before. The XML to be processed is the current file. I'm only using variables here. The CSS URL is in the framework. A bit more configuration. The output where it should be generated, you can say put it in the current file directory and give it a name, the current file name .pdf. We'll copy this, and last is the catalogs, because it needs to find the DTDs. So this is this one. The good thing is that you only need to do this configuration once, and your users will have it out of the box. So it's not catalogs, it's catalog. And that's that. And let's tell Oxygen where the PDF is and how to find it. So this one is pmode and style. Okay, if we, let's close the PDF, and if we try to generate the PDF, but this time using this other type of scenario, assuming that I didn't made any mistake, and we have the same output. So if you want to use it, you can do that right away. Yes. And with that, thank you for attending this presentation. I hope it was informative for you. If you have any questions, we have 1 minute. Or more. I don't see anyone else waiting for the next session. I give it a try in 1 minute. Fast forward. The recording will be available on our website on the Tekom event page, unless we screw something horribly and we don't have any recording. No questions? What XML format? Do you use XML in your organization? I'll put the questions if you don't have any questions.
We work only with Jita at the moment.
Okay. But it's still a bit of value in what you've seen. I mean, see how you can customize the data support further on. I mean, through the CSS and author actions.
Yeah.
That's good. And you're about to switch to data, so that would also, it's good to know how well you can customize Oxygen as well.
We use XML in our interface. We are a machine maker, we use XML in the interface, in the screen from our machine.
That's something else. Okay. Thank you for attending, and I hope you have an interesting conference.